Hi, I'm Femi OK. You're in the stream. Will criminal charges bring justice to Flint, Michigan's water poisoning crisis? Today, an update on their case from Flint residents who are still struggling to access clean water. In the US state of Michigan, the more than 3-year-old Flint water poisoning crisis continues. This month, new criminal charges, including the involuntary manslaughter of an 85-year-old Flint man. The charges were brought against high-ranking officials, including the state's Director of Health and Human Services. Now, in the United States, government officials rarely receive criminal convictions for public safety failures. But could Flint's case end differently? The crisis began in 2014 when the city of Flint attempted to save money by switching its water supply and neglected safety measures in the water treatment process. Those actions led to corrosive levels of lead and other toxins in the water supply. Citizens complained of brown, foul-tasting water for more than a year before the city declared a state of emergency. That was at the end of 2015. Today, we want to look into the scandal's criminal cases and hear how the residents are coping. So with us from Detroit, we have Noah Hall, a lawyer specializing in environmental and water legal matters. He's also a member of the Michigan Attorney General's team investigating Flint's public health crisis. In Flint, Melissa Mays, founder of the group What Are You Fighting For? She was one of the plaintiffs in a lawsuit that led to a settlement to replace her city's lead-tainted water pipes. Val Washington is a Flint resident who's also a lawyer and a retired judge. And Yvonne Lewis, founder of the National Center for African American Health Consciousness. She is a community advocate who helps to educate Flint residents on health issues directly relating to the water crisis. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry we're all here again, but it is good to have you on the stream. Let me share something with you, guests. This is from Talia Buford. She is a ProPublica reporter. She's been reporting on the Flint water crisis. After the Flint involuntary manslaughter charges, the first thing I thought was, this is great, but will anyone actually go to jail? Yvonne, when you heard about the criminal charges, first thing you thought was what?
Well, the first thing I thought was, well, there's still some progress being made because I recognize that those charges were a result of the continued advocacy voice of community residents, about 100 residents who went to Lansing to say, this issue is not over for us and we still want some justice. And so I was excited to hear that there was some movement. I don't think we're having a parade about anyone being charged with an issue like this, but it is certainly important that some kind of justice is done as it relates to this issue.
Sure. Lansing is the capital of Michigan. No, you're nodding your head. You did this, right?
I definitely would not say I did this. Like everything in Flint, it began with the community. It began with the people who are affected and the people who've been living with unsafe water, in some cases for 3 years now. Frankly, a lot of us who are the supposed experts in this field have been playing catch up with the residents. The residents and the citizens are the ones who knew about this first, who took action first. And a lot of us professionals are really just trying to make up for lost time and give the residents some sense of justice.
Melissa, last time I spoke to you and the stream spoke to you was at the beginning of the year, and we were talking about the possibility of criminal charges. Could this actually happen? It's happening. Are you shocked?
It's a little unreal because there have been charges, but they were all slaps on the wrist. Involuntary manslaughter is a pretty serious one, and it's proper because people died because these people charged did not do their job. They did not protect the public health, and that was what they were hired to do. And people died as a result, and people are still suffering. The unfortunate part is that the governor is allowing these people to remain in their position and actually still oversee Flint's recovery, which is terrifying.
So this is interesting. Sam Riddle is saying exactly the same thing on Twitter. There are more steps on the ladder of culpability. Here is a picture of the governor of Michigan, and it says Flint water person of interest. Who's chuckling there? Val?
Val, I'm chuckling because that was my reaction when I heard about the charges, is that, well, that's great, but it's really not far enough up the ladder of accountability. And it's a great place to start, but we need to keep going forward. I think that it was revealing when the governor's attorney said, oh, the governor's willing to give a statement if he's subpoenaed. How come the subpoena hasn't been issued? Let's get to the bottom of things. Let's hear what the governor has to say about things.
Sure. If I could, on the issue of the subpoena for the governor, as Val knows, he's an incredibly experienced attorney. A couple of legal realities to put in play. The first is that typically, especially in a state court proceeding, you don't subpoena a potential target of the investigation. So it would be a little unusual to subpoena the governor while at the same time continue investigating the governor as a potential defendant. The other thing I could say about the subpoena is that I can't say anything about it. Whether we sought a subpoena for the governor or the results of an attempt to subpoena the governor,
you can tell
are
us
unfortunately
nothing.
all under seal.
All right.
Right.
Let's have a listen to the Attorney General for Michigan. His name is Bill Schuette. This was at a protest that Yvonne went to. Yvonne, tell us about this protest on June the 13th. What was going on?
On June the 13th, well, actually, I was not present at that event, but what actually happened was residents from the community, about 100 residents from the community, took bottles of water in bags to Lansing, Michigan, which is the state capital, to say, this is what we're living with every day. And to this point, it does not seem like anything has been done to really give justice to this issue, or really to actually acknowledge in a significant way how impacting this has been to the residents in the community. And so it's very, very important that we keep in mind that even though there are a lot of legalities and a lot of processes that people have to go through, everyday people who are not involved in those things don't really understand what that takes. And so even if there's some communication that comes forward that says these are some processes that we're taking, so that it doesn't feel like we're left out on an island without no hope for what could be potentially a change for our community.
Let me show you what happened then on that protest. This is the Attorney General of Michigan, and he came out to talk to the protesters. Have a look.
My name is Richard Jones.
Hi, Richard
and I just
Jones.
wondered, do you plan on pressing charges against our governor?
You know what? In this investigation, I don't get into who I'm going to charge and who I'm not. That's not how it's done. What we do in any investigation is when there's probable cause that a crime has been committed, then we file charges. That's what we do.
So that's a sort of wait and see. But what's happened since we spoke to you last, Melissa, is that there was a settlement so that pipes could be replaced in Flint over the next 3 years. Progress?
It's something. So I was one of the organizers for that protest, and one of the questions I had asked our Attorney General was, these charges are excellent, that's great, but our water's still not safe. And how can your office defend the governor and the state against our lawsuits? So I'm a plaintiff in several different lawsuits, one being class actions and damages, and then the other is the Safe Drinking Water Act case that we settled March 28th, which is to force the city and state to come into compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. Unfortunately, that only covers lead. That's enforceable, but we did get the state to settle to replace all lead and galvanized service lines, which make up about half of the service lines in the city. The problem being is that they're still not replacing the mains or the piping inside the homes and the water heaters, and they are devastated. They are contaminated, so even if they give us a new service line, the water's still not going to be safe until every piece of plumbing is replaced. So it is a step forward, but it's only a small piece of the puzzle, and we have so much longer to go.
And that's going to cost around about $100 million. Noah, what were you
That's $100 million for about 18 to 20,000 lead service lines.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, what were you going to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I very much agree with Melissa. And frankly, the $100 million price tag is nothing compared to the public health that would be at risk and the lives that would be protected. This is $100 million that should have been spent years ago, not after the crisis, but before. I very much understand, frustration doesn't even begin to explain it. The residents in Flint have been living under brutal conditions with a government they can't trust and water they can't drink. And the various arms of the state, from the governor to the state agencies, and yes, including the attorney general, have not really provided the kind of not only relief but acknowledgement for what's gone on in Flint. I can clarify that while the state attorney general is constitutionally required to defend the state and its departments and its officers, that's not the arm of the attorney general's office that our special counsel team is part of. Our special counsel team is independent of the state attorney general and the office that defends the state.
Sure.
Our special counsel team
was
created specifically
it could be a little bit
to
confusing,
investigate
Noah,
the
because
state.
it's like the state. It from the outside, it feels like it's the state investigating the state. But
That's exactly what it is on the inside.
Yeah.
It is the state. It is a state-appointed special counsel investigating the state. That's exactly
Does that make you
what it
an
is.
incredibly unpopular person or very popular?
I don't have a lot of friends left from either side.
Right, I understand that. Let's talk about real practicalities here. We talked about the legal bit, which really is a step forward from the last time we dipped into what was happening in Flint. This little girl, you may know her. She's known as Little Miss Flint. Her real name is Amayana Kopeni. We actually asked her, what is it like growing up in Flint as a 9-year-old? This is what she told us.
Being a kid living in the Flint water crisis, I can't take a bubble bath anymore in the Flint water. It messes up your skin and it gives you bad rashes. And when I try to take a shower, I can take a shower, but I can only take like a 2-minute speed shower. And if I stay in for too long, I get a bad rash. And then when you cook with the water, you can't cook with the water. You have to use like bottled water for everything. And if you run out, then you just gotta get some more. And then I can't play in the slip and slide. I can't play with any water. Only bottled water.
All right, practicalities of being a 9-year-old living in Flint. Being slightly older, Val, how much is the water safety on your mind as you go through your day? Give us an example.
Well, as I said earlier, I don't shower at home, and we have a whole house water filtration system. I don't trust it. And we have individual shower heads that have filters on them in each one of the showers in the house. I don't trust them. And it's like when I go out of town, I feel as though the weight has been lifted off of my shoulders. I can put my hands under the faucet. I can drink the water if I want to. I mean, I still drink bottled water exclusively, but the reality is that weight that's constantly bearing down on you, weighing you down each and every day, is removed when you environmentally remove yourself from the situation. And I think to steal what should be a happy time for a 9-year-old from her and other youngsters who are living through this process, not to mention the health and the cognitive issues that they will perhaps face at some later point, I think that is the real crime here. And I don't know that criminal charges or jail terms is ever going to hold people fully accountable for the damage that they've done to the psychic and to the physical well-being of the citizens of Flint, Michigan.
Melissa, how are your children?
You make a very, very
Yes.
good point, because
Go
when
ahead,
we
Yvonne.
talk about those physical and emotional barriers or challenges, it's like the risk continues. We're talking about only replacing a few of the lead pipes and lead service lines as in certain geographic areas in the city. There's planned to be 10 areas in the city worked on all at one time this summer. Now, even though it may not be in my particular community or my particular neighborhood, who knows how much that contamination will filter through the water? Because as I say to people, it doesn't stop because you're only working on that block. The water will go through the entire system. And so there's a continual sense of risk. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is because people in this community are rallying and still working and still believing that we have a voice. And it is important for us to stand up and speak out and let that voice be heard, even in the face of this adversity. And that's what keeps us going in Flint. And I recognize Little Miss Flint, it's a challenge. I have grandbabies that I can't see on a regular basis because they're concerned about where, will they take a bath and how often they can take a bath. But it's so important for us to understand that we will and are working through the challenges, but we do need to have an understanding that this isn't over and it will be a long time before it is.
Yvonne, there's a picture we have of residents rallying on June the 13th, going to elected officials, telling them what they're having to go through on a daily basis. But you're also rallying the community and helping to educate them. What are you doing?
Okay, so when people are going out in community, we have several different mechanisms. There are people going door to door, handing out literature, helping people understand what's going on in the community, how to use the water filters, if those water filters, how to keep and be sure that your water filter in your home is safe. It's amazing that you have to think every 30 days you need to change the filter on your faucet.
Right.
And then before a year, you may need to change the whole unit. So these are messages that we need to continually get out to our community. And there are so many different facets of our community. We have the deaf and hard of hearing who may not ever, for a long time, didn't know about what was going on. We have those who are challenged with speaking the English language. And then we have people who are just, they're illiterate, they can't read. And so we've got, but the wonderful thing about this is we have other community members who are stepping up to the plate and say, I'll read for you, I'll carry water for you. We have churches and community groups that are getting in their vans, going door to door, carrying water for people who can't do it for themselves. So this community, though facing all of these difficult challenges, are rallying to the cause and saying, we can make a difference. But I do want to make this appeal. You know, whenever there's a crisis, you're not sure how you will handle things in the midst of the crisis. And people will come and ask you, what can we do? How can we help? Well, now as we're moving beyond the I'll say this, the impact of the crisis, we're becoming much better able to articulate or to share with others what it is we need help doing and how that help will be useful for us.
Sure.
One of
Could I add
things
something
I want to point
Yvonne?
No, Melissa, you go first, and then Noah, you go second. Melissa, you start. Go ahead.
Great.
So as we delivered those letters, Flint Rising has been going door to door since February of 2016. And so this year we decided to start collecting some of those stories. So we had notes that residents filled out, and it was addressed to Governor Snyder, and they were "You owe me" notes. So what we did was we rolled them up and we put them into 1,145 empty water bottles, because that is how many days it had been on June 13th since we've had clean water. Now, the awesome thing is that we put the names and addresses on there, so the governor's staff has to open every single empty water bottle and read every single note and reply to their constituents, because the names and addresses are there.
Sure.
We wanted them to feel what it's like to open all these water bottles and then have to write back after reading this heartbreaking and infuriating letter of what the governor owes them. They have to write them back. So we're waiting to see what those responses are. And so when we delivered it, it was huge, but also it was a way to go an hour away and bring 1,145 residents with us, even if they couldn't go, and deliver it to the people who are making the decisions about us and for us without us still.
Let me just show the amount of community activity that you're hearing, not just from our guests, but also back here behind me is hashtag Flint Water Crisis. You can see what the community are putting online and posting online. We're online right now on Facebook Live, and Jen Doan comments as she's watching this. Until the United States and all relevant parties acknowledge access to clean drinking water as a human right and take immediate action to address this, there will be no justice. Noah, what did you want to add?
Well, first of all, amen to this statement from Jen Doan, who posted. Eventually, we need to get to the point in the United States and elsewhere where governments and law recognize that water is a human right, an obligation of society to give to everybody. And really, that was my main thought when I was listening to Yvonne and Melissa. The work that's being done by activists and leaders in Flint is incredible. To respond to the crisis, to help vulnerable members of the community, and to hold government accountable. But folks in the community should not have to be doing this. This is government's job. Government is supposed to provide safe, reliable drinking water. Mothers shouldn't have to worry about whether the water is safe when they give it to their 9-year-old daughter. And the community should be spending its resources and its time to make their lives better and to raise their children and to do all the things to make the community the kind of place that we all want to live in. They should not have to be figuring out how to supply themselves with water, how to deliver bottles of water to senior citizens and folks with English as a second language. This is fundamentally government's job. And putting aside the legal blame, the thing that's most frustrating to me in all of this is that the state government has yet to acknowledge that they messed up, that they wronged the people of Flint, that they violated the Safe Drinking Water Act, and that they failed to uphold the duties.
Is that ever going to happen? I mean, you're a lawyer. Why would they ever say we messed up?
Well, if I were the state's lawyer, and I said this publicly even before I joined the special counsel team, if I was the state's lawyer, I would have acknowledged right away that we messed up and move into how can we solve this? How can we allocate resources to fix this problem? How can we give the community the tools, including the financial tools they need to overcome over a year of lead poisoning and unsafe water? The government needs to move from being a defendant to being an ally for the community, and it hasn't happened.
Before I
And I'd like to add one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Val.
I'd like to add one thing. I don't want to cut anyone off.
No,
but
go ahead.
In addition to having water as a right, you have to add the additional component of affordable water. I had a lawsuit that was voluntarily dismissed in federal court because the federal judge says, well, Val, there's no federal right to affordable water. I thought he was wrong, but in researching it, he was right. Yeah. To me, that's the part of the equation that people need to focus on. It's great to have water as a right, but if you can't afford it, you're still doing the same thing. You're excluding a huge portion of the population from having access.
That's so wrong about what's happening in Flint, so much. But one of them is the high water bills. You can't use your water safely. Melissa, give us a sense of how high the water bills are.
Well, in April 30th, I believe, I received a letter. I was one of 8,002 people that received a letter, and mine said if I didn't pay my $2,057 water bill, they were going to place a lien on my home, and so they could take my home. So we pay the highest rates in the United States, 8 times the national average. My service fees are about $93 a month. So before I even get a drop of water, it's about $93 for broken pipes to be attached to my home, basically. And so now they're saying since I'm not paying for my poisoned water, that's way too expensive, that they're going to take my home. So that's one thing that we are all facing right now, and that was reinforced by the state of Michigan yesterday.
See, this here, the Flint Journal says Flint residents back at risk of losing homes over unpaid water bills. And then Elder E. Meekan says no resident should pay for anything they cannot use, suspend water bills until the infrastructure has been replaced. And you say what, Yvonne?
I think that there's an underlying issue that often gets overlooked sometimes as we continue the conversation, and that's the issue of environmental racism and environmental injustice, equity and equality. And when we look at, and it was mentioned earlier about the high water rates, but we also look at the fact that we had an emergency manager, and that was a Public Act 436 that was passed through the legislature, but had been previously voted down by the citizens of the community, of the whole state voted the act down for emergency manager. But in a late night session, it passed through in as a part of an appropriations bill. And so that leaves no voice for the citizens. But when you think about it, when we look across the state of Michigan, those communities that were adversely impacted by emergency manager were communities of color. And so you just bring that right home to Flint.
Right.
The Michigan Civil Rights Commission looked at the whole issue of civil rights. It looked at racial injustice, and their findings did show that environmental injustice was a real critical, or environmental racism was a significant.
So much to talk about in Flint. I'm going to wrap up this conversation for now. We will continue online and on future editions of The Stream. Let me leave you some words from Melissa's Twitter feed. She says here, we have had to endure so much disrespect, betrayal, exploitation and humiliation, but we have endured. We still fight. We have always, and we always will. Thank you, guests, for being part of this episode of The Stream. Take care.